70 front tires, man. I'm trying. Everybody, awesome job today. Keep your hands up. It'll kick their ass at Homestead. Woo! Championship 4 again, baby! Come on!
And welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Per usual, we've got a few things to discuss today. That being said, at the top of this show, if you're listening to this on YouTube, on our feed there's a good chance you missed last week's episode, and hopefully we'll have it resolved by this week's. So you may see some doubling up of episodes, trying to figure out what's going on with our distribution feed there. It's technology, right? It's never going to be perfect, but yeah, if you do listen there, we do appreciate the listens, and hopefully you'll hear this one, I guess, at the end of the day. As far as everything else goes, if you do like what you're hearing, please like, share, subscribe, hit us up on X, follow us there. Also, historichollaps@gmail.com. Yeah, with that, let's dive into it with some news. Right out of the gate, let's go IndyCar news. There was a test at Iowa, a couple key guys, Award and Herta mainly, doing a Firestone test for Iowa. They both Award and Herta complimented the test for the hybrid functionality. A little bit improvement on the ovals as far as the hybrid system goes. They sampled some different aero packages that might be available next year, some different tire compounds, and a different engine setup. So they kind of went through a whole bunch of motions, trying out some new stuff that's in a little bit of R&D at the moment. So kudos to IndyCar on that, really working on their short track product after all the negative press, and we saw the Iowa failure doubleheader weekend this last week with the competitiveness of all of it. While we're on IndyCar subject, there was also a NXT test, Indy Lights, formerly known. Some drivers that had been in the cars before, some that hadn't. So we'll just talk about, some of the top 5 here. Test results on speed. Now, granted, these are tests, so take that with a grain of salt. They're nothing that you can anticipate next year off of. But fastest on the day was Miles Rowe. Second was Dennis Hogger. 3, Lochie Hughes. 4, Callum Hedge. And 5, quickest on the day, Liam Skeets. So also there was Haley Deegan was in this test. It was her first time in an NXT car. We talked about it before, but she had done some Formula 3 testing here stateside, so get some open wheel experience. She spent like 3 or 4 days testing at one track, Formula 3 earlier this summer. So she did not do well in the speed charts, but considering she has the least amount of experience, and by the end of the day, she was only 4 miles per hour off the pace of the most experienced drivers. So really fairly positive, right? Like you can't be too upset about that. For day one, she had a lot of press. Obviously, she's an extremely popular driver. So let's jump over to an interview, some key points in an interview she had talking about her experience with HMD Motorsports and what she expects out of the series.
Yeah, HMD, I flew out to Indy and I met with quite a few teams and kind of just seeing where would somewhere be that I feel at home, that would work with my partners, everything like that. There's I feel like so many pieces to the puzzle, the hospitality side of things, how can they accommodate certain things, and so I think finding a team that was able to do all of that was really important for me, but also have very quality cars, equipment, and program, be competitive. And HMD's proven that they are, so I think as a whole, their team was able to offer me a lot of things that I needed for myself. For me, I want to progress, I want to learn the dynamics of these cars. I don't want to go and say, oh, I'm tight or loose or understeer, oversteer, having to learn that side. But I don't want to do that. I want to be able to say, hey, I want to make this change. I want to be able to do this, that. So I think really learning the dynamics of everything, understanding every single side of this world is what my goals are. Yeah, that's a nice side of HMD, is there is a lot of teammates there. You have a lot of quality drivers, a lot of data that I've never had access to in the past 6 years of my life. So there's definitely a lot that you can utilize if you're willing to put in the work and utilize all that. So watching a bunch of footage, taking a bunch of notes, going through all the data. There is so much data to go over, and a lot of quality drivers that have driven to HMD at these tests and be able to utilize that side of things, see exactly what they're doing at the exact moments. That's something I haven't had.
All right, a couple pieces of little random news, not really associated with anything else, and then not a heavy news week so far. We'll put this out, and then we'll probably get 10 or 12 breaking stories, and we'll be late to the party. But some random news: Kevin Harvick and Keelan Harvick will both run late models next year. Maybe in a Cars Tour move, hopefully, because the Cars Tour is the best. They are looking at stock late models, so we'll see how that goes. But pretty excited to see Kevin Harvick catch a couple races, and then obviously Keelan as well. The other thing we want to talk about, we talked about Nitro Cross a few episodes back, then very early in the year. Nitro Cross is it's that Travis Pastrana dream, that electric rally cross, those little hatchbacks, and they've got some jumps and everything else, right? Well, they have canceled the remaining races of the season. It's kind of interesting. This is also the series that Connor Daly ran a couple of times for a Dreyer Reinbold team. I think a lot of this wasn't marketed very well. You couldn't really watch it very easily. Well, you could if you had the right apps. You could watch it easily. It wasn't behind a paywall, but it wasn't being streamed anywhere common either, right? Because it's a smaller series. So you had to have like Rumble, which is that offshoot of YouTube or whatever. But yeah, you had to have the Rumble app to watch it on there. And then the commentary was kind of spotty. It was kind of, I don't know. It reminded me very like circa late 90s X Games commentary. There's a lot of back and forth that seemed kind of non-important, if you will. So the racing itself was kind of cool, but the product wasn't delivered very well in my opinion. It was a good concept. Hopefully they can kind of take this and mold it into something else in the upcoming seasons. But for now, it looks like the rest of this year there will be no more Nitro Rallycross. So kind of a bummer if you were into it, but just one of those things, like I said, wasn't marketed all that well. Going into some race recaps, we had a lot of season finales this time. Let's start out with Lucas Oil Late Model Series. We had the Dirt Track World Championship at Eldora Speedway. Pretty good event for the Dirt Late Model Series. Race win went to Bobby Pierce. He also won that Dirt 100, I believe it's called World 100, at Eldora earlier this year. And then this was the season finale, right? So we had crowned a champion. Ricky Thornton Jr. took home his first championship in Lucas Oil Late Model Series. 2024 champion, so congrats to Ricky Thornton Jr. And congrats to Bobby Pierce on the race win. Moving over to World of Outlaws at Route 66 Speedway. Friday night, had a good feature. Feature win on that one goes to Aaron Rutzel. Returned Saturday night, again at Route 66 Speedway. Had the whole weekend there. And feature win goes to Buddy Kofoid. Again, Buddy Kofoid's doing great. Surprised to see Aaron Rutzel get that Friday night win. That was pretty cool. But the Saturday night feature and a little bit larger money purse went to Buddy Kofoid. So congrats to both of them and their teams on that one.
I told myself the start was going to be everything because I could tell that it was starting to, slick off to where it was kind of going to be top dominant because I felt like the bottom was already kind of given out in that dash even. So, I knew that they were going to let the track go and that it was probably going to get to what I thought looked like yesterday, even though I didn't get to run yesterday in the feature. But then it actually started taking rubber a little bit into one, so you feel like you actually gained speed getting into one. I think it was just the exit of 4 was just really wide earlier in the race, so I could fire off good and get to the top, and then kind of diamond under Sheldon Slider and kind of control the race like you said. So, I was nervous with all those yellows and didn't want to see that one with, I think, 2 to go, but, I couldn't see my guys, but they weren't telling me I wasn't doing anything wrong, so I didn't want to choose the outside or fire on the outside and try and tow them the long way around just because I feel like there was just so much meat down the front stretch on the bottom to take off on. So and then just a matter of just getting to the top and just not tripping over the cushion, and it built up out of 4, and it was kind of treacherous just because it was so close to the wall and so short, so it was easy to get over it and kind of hung out. But my Roth Motorsports crew guys are, unbelievable. Like I said, this is the most fun I've ever had racing and best I've ever felt in any race car. So,
moving over to USAC, another season finale, Silver Crown Cars, 2024 finale at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park. There's something so cool about Silver Crown Cars at IRP. They couldn't have a better place to finish. Super awesome. Cody Swanson gets the race win on that one. And also ends up series champion once again. This is his 8th championship in Silver Crown. Very emotional victory speech on this one. Let's take a minute. We'll listen to that, and you can hear it how important this stuff is to these guys. So let's check it out.
Maybe my only attempt to explain is that God is great. I mean, if you want to talk about this one specifically, right? I don't know that I should have even raced this year. I shattered my foot pretty well over the winter, and I can't believe that God put so many special people in my life to give me a chance to walk like I can and to race again, and let alone make it for the first one in the spring. So, I mean, I guess that's how it starts, right? And then you think about all the other people he put in my life. That's it's part of this Doran Binks racing team, right? That from Kevin and Dan and Ken, that are kind of the principals of it and make it happen. And
all right, moving over to the Cars Tour, North Wilkesboro. Again, great track for a great show. Cars Tour is always fun to watch. You had Carson Quapple leading the field to green, pole position there for that race. And there's a lot of sliding, a lot of tire conserving in certain spots. Cars making some good moves, some slide jobs. And I've said it probably 100 times by now, but Cars Tour is the best overall series we've got in the market today, without a doubt. For the small operation that they are, it's pretty wild, the stuff they can get done and the product they deliver on. So coming down to the end of the race, Connor Jones gets the race win. This is the second race win in a row for him. Obviously, end of the season, so that'll be it for 2024. Championship title went to Brendan Queen. That super cool number 3 car. They've got that pixelated graphic and all that. But kind of figured at the start of the season that Brendan had that he was gonna get up there in the points and stay up there, and he definitely did. Had a couple rough ones here in the middle, but pretty strong showing at North Wilkesboro, and ends up getting the championship as well. So, all right, that brings us to NASCAR at Vegas. Yeah, playoff race. We're still in the playoffs, obviously, postseason. Let's kick it off with the Xfinity side. Stage 1, Xfinity race, you had Cole Custer get that one, get the important stage points. Stage 2, Justin Allgaier. And then first race win of the season goes to AJ Allmendinger, locking himself into the final 4 of the playoffs. So he chose the best time ever to try to get his first race win of the season, but the Dinger did it, locking himself in. So congrats to all those drivers and that team, and then obviously AJ and getting locked into the final 4 for the championship. So post Vegas, here's where Xfinity playoff standings are sitting. First spot, the Dinger obviously locked in. Justin Allgaier, he got those good stage points with that stage win. He's in second. Cole Custer, again, stage points. In stage 1, he's in third. Chandler Smith, who's been just running up front, collecting what he can, he's in 4th position at the moment. Those below the cut line currently are Austin Hill at -8, Jesse Love at -13, Sam Mayer at -23, and Sammy Smith at -53. Sammy Smith's going to have a heck of a time he's kind of got a win to get in at this point. He's going to have a hard time getting those points. The other ones are reachable if somebody's got a bad day and somebody else has a good day. But at the beginning of the season, I'm not for sure we'd see Austin Hill locked into the top 4. But, we got a couple races to go, so we'll see how it all shakes out. But that's where we're at. AJ Allmendinger got himself locked in. So moving over to the Cup Series. Cup Series race was decent enough for a traditional 1.5 miles. It wasn't as exciting as a Kansas or something like that, but stage 1, Tyler Reddick getting very, very important stage points, and had he known how the rest of his day was going to go, he definitely would have liked the outcome as well. Gets himself 10 points for the playoff fight there. Then 10 laps into stage 2, right off of getting the stage win, they pit cycle, everybody does their thing. Huge crash with a squeeze on Elliott. Reddick tries to shoot a gap on the high line. Elliott kind of gets squeezed by Truex, and you end up with Reddick sliding down into the infield, hitting the grass, doing a full flip, doing a little slide, and then flips back over. And then, in true dirt track fashion, something that Scott Bloomquist would have been very happy with him about, he ends up driving this busted car back to pit road. Obviously, his day's done, everything's bent, but just the fact that he drove it home himself was pretty wild. So moving on from there, you go stage 2, you get Christopher Bell getting some stage points there. And Christopher Bell was fast. He was predicted to win this race. Vegas is tough on him. He had a hard fight. He had to pit for some fuel mileage and tires. He's not a fuel-saving guy like some of the others, but he ends up making up a ton of ground on all these cars that stayed out, working his way back up front. He's within arm's length of taking Logano out of the lead at the last lap, but couldn't reach it. Logano ends up getting the win and locking himself into the final 4, which is quite a wild stat there. But yeah, let's listen to what Bell's thoughts were post-race real quick.
I think everyone here can answer that, but regardless of how much time he had, the 12 car was with Joey, trying to play defense for him. So it was going to take the right move to get by him, but we had, 30, almost 40 lap newer tires than him, and clearly a lot more pace than what he had at that time. So I didn't get there in 267 laps though.
All right, so we talked about Logano gets the win. He locks himself in to the playoffs. The crazy stat is he's had more Final Four appearances than any other driver. Not only that, every Final Four appearance is on an even numbered year. So since the playoffs were rolled out and he joined it, every even numbered year he's made it to the Final Four. His 2 championships came the even numbered years. He hasn't made it on an odd numbered year. It's every other year. It's pretty wild when you look at it from a stat, standpoint. So here's where we're at post Vegas. We've got Logano locked in. Christopher Bell's right behind him. Obviously not locked in, but in the best place that he could be for points. Kyle Larson. Side note, Kyle Larson had a hell of a day in Vegas. They were 2 laps down at one point. A lot of pit stop issues. They didn't have a ton of speed, but they were comparable. But at the end of it, he ends up in 11th place on the lead lap, makes up a bunch. So he's still in at number 3 in points for the Final Four. William Byron is in that 4th spot. And he's just secretly just finishing well. Top 5s, getting points when he can, staying out of trouble. So below our cut line, this is where it gets interesting. Hamlin, minus 27 points. Reddick now minus 30, which would be minus 40, so he did do well getting that stage win. Blaney's minus 47. Blaney had a terrible day, obviously. He wrecked in practice, goes to a backup car, had no speed, bad vibrations, all kinds of problems with it. So, and then rounding out the 8th spot is Chase Elliott, which, again, bad day for Chase. Those guys are kind of in a must-win situation. Hamlin could get a couple stages at Homestead, but he's going to have to probably win by Martinsville to be locked in, unless some of these other guys have horrible days. We'll see how it all shakes out for that. That covers most of the race week there. We do have Homestead coming up, so we'll see what that shakes out to be. Truck Series at Homestead as well. Connor Daly back in the Polka Dot. Nice Motorsports ride for Chevrolet, so that'll be cool. And Nice Motorsports has made a couple of moves with crew chiefs and whatnot too, so be on the lookout for all of that. And hopefully we're gonna know NASCAR champion here in a few weeks. So it's really winding down to what we have to talk about on the show every week with these race recaps. So, and I guess we can't cap off the race recaps quite yet. We do need to mention we had the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, COTA, if you will, for Formula One. As always, huge turnout for Formula One at COTA. COTA is a pretty sweet track for their setup. And really, Ferrari came to win. Charles Leclerc gets the win there. Carlos Sainz gets second. And Max Verstappen in the Red Bull #1 entry tops off the podium in 3rd place. So we also had 2 McLarens, which are still fighting pretty hard. And Lando Norris in 4th and Piastri in 5th. So 2 Ferraris, a Red Bull in the middle, and then 2 McLarens rounding off the top 5 there. So this weekend, you do have the Mexican Grand Prix coming up at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez track, which we've talked about possibly IndyCar looking into a race there in the future. But we do have another North American Formula One race this weekend. So that one's 2 p.m. on Sunday if you guys are interested in that. But we've also got NASCAR going at the same time. So try to do picture-in-picture or something.
It looks like that the Penske cars are going to be starting up front today. Rick Mears on the pole. and alongside his teammate, Kevin Cogan. Unfortunately, the thrills and excitement of Indianapolis type car racing this weekend were marred by the death of the 1982 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year, Jim Hickman. Hickman had been bumped from the starting lineup, but with less than 5 minutes to go in a final practice session, his car slammed into the first turn wall. The impact carried it to the exit of turn number 2. He was pinned in the wreckage for several minutes, was removed to a local hospital in very critical condition. Hickman's wife was flown to his bedside and was with him when he died about 4:30 this morning. We at ESPN extend our heart-filled sympathies to the family of Jim Hickman.
Talk about a guy with a pretty limited history due to some tragedy. Today we're going to talk about Mr. Jim Hickman. Jim Hickman, born James Franklin Hickman II, May 9th, 1943 in Panama, Oklahoma, sadly passing away August 1st, 1982 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This was at the Milwaukee Speedway. He graduated from Oklahoma State University in 1966. To get into his racing history, he participated a lot in the national championship for SCCA, which is the Sports Car Club of America. At the time, that was equivalent to, say, Formula Ford Series, things like that. So his greatest achievement from that series is 1981 Road Atlanta race. Hickman started on the pole, and he also won that race. He then drove a few rounds in the kart series, which is a very limited time, mainly the 1982 season. He participated in 3 events during that season, as well as the Indianapolis 500. This was during the years where there was sanctioning issues and CART wasn't actually a supporter of the 1982 Indy 500, but he did participate regardless. He finished 3 of the 4 races in the top 10, which was pretty good for a guy who was a rookie coming out of Formula Ford, and he was named the Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year by his 7th place finish in 1982, so he did impress some people in the short time that he was there. This would be his only Indy 500 though, unfortunately. Little history on the outside of racing world with him before we get into the tragedy of it. He was a well-known car dealer. He owned a huge Datsun dealership in Chamblee, Georgia. He also owned a ranch down in Georgia. He was a fighter pilot in the U.S. Navy. Just all-around good American race car driver. So getting into the tragedy of it all, we'll just get into what Motorsport Memorial had to say. They published some information. The event was July 31st, 1982, racing for the championship auto racing teams, also known as CART, Pravini Veal, Tony Bettenhausen 200 practice. So the Tony Bettenhausen 200 event, which was very common back then, yearly event. There was a practice session going on, Milwaukee Mile, which we've talked about before, but that's a 1 mile oval, which for a little more backstory was established in 1954. But Jim was driving a March 81C Cosworth number 42, sponsored by Stroh's Beer. It was kind of in that era, it was a pretty popular car. Here's what Motorsports Memorial had to say about it in their post on the incident and what had happened. It says, Jim Hickman, who had been named 1982 Rookie of the Year at the Indianapolis 500 earlier that year, thanks to a solid 7th place finish, died when the throttle of his Cosworth-powered March stuck open, sending his car into Turn 1's outer wall with less than 5 minutes left in the final practice session for the Tony Bettenhausen Memorial 200 held at the Milwaukee Mile track. The car, extensively damaged from hitting a retaining fence post mounted atop the wall, came to rest the exit of Turn 2. CART's rescue team needed 15 minutes to extract Hickman from the wreckage, just due to how bad that car was tore up. They couldn't get him out of it. Hickman was then transported to County General Hospital and immediately put on life support systems. Later, he was transferred to the Frodert Memorial Lutheran Hospital, where he succumbed to a massive head injury shortly after 4:30 in the morning on Sunday, August 1st, 1982. It is believed that Hickman's head hit one of the steel poles that supported the debris fence. This was pre-aero screen cockpits, quality safety stuff we have now. A little different back then, right? I mean, we're talking 1982. They also went on to say, a graduate of the Sports Car Club of America Super V, Formula Ford, and Formula Continental competition, Hickman won the Formula Continental race at the 1981 runoffs at Road Atlanta, thus earning his 1 SCCA National Championship in the FCON class, driving a Ralt RT5 VW. For those who are into the very old stuff, that's a pretty common Formula Ford setup. Hickman started 4 kart races in 1982, driving the Stroh's beer-sponsored March 81C for Florida-based Rattlesnake Racing, which that's a super sweet name for a race team. Jim Hickman was a resident of Chandler, Georgia. He was a graduate of Oklahoma State University, former Navy fighter pilot. He was survived by his wife Linda and their 2 children, Ashley and James Franklin III, and mother Imona May Hickman. I believe I got that right. Jim Hickman is buried in Fairview Cemetery in Panama, Oklahoma. Hickman's tragedy also went with a trio of fatalities in separate venues in that weekend of American racing, as Gene Richards died at Talladega, and there was a hydroplane driver, Dean Chenoweth, that was racing in Columbia River in Washington, and also lost their lives. So three racers lost their lives that weekend in a trio of fatalities, which is pretty dark weekend in motorsports. But these guys are driven by the thrill of it, and we like to say that they pass doing what they love. So that wraps up the history on that. Obviously a very short career, but prominent nonetheless. He did a lot of good things in the short time that he had. And we thank him for giving us a little bit of memory there. Rookie of the Year 1982 at the Indy 500. Drove wheel to wheel with some of the legends. So probably the greatest bright spot on his career at that point. With that, we'll wrap this short episode up. Like I said, we're running out of stuff here at getting towards the end of the season. So we're going to have to do some deep dive into some extensive racing careers later on this year. Cap off this first season of Historic Hot Laps as we wind down into the winter months. But we've got to get ready for a race weekend in Miami. So Homestead, we'll see what happens with NASCAR. Got a couple other things going. Some dirt track stuff still wrapping up. As always, appreciate you all. Please like, share, subscribe. Again, follow us on X. HistoricHotLaps@gmail.com if you need that. Send us comments, questions, anything like that. And appreciate it. Stay safe, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us at Historic Hot Laps on X and all your other social platforms for the latest updates and sneak peeks into upcoming episodes. You can reach out to us directly at historichotlaps@gmail.com. Send us your feedback, questions, comments, opinions, and additional subject matter you'd like us to cover. Thanks for tuning in.